Well, hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on this classic wooden motor cruiser here in Victoria, British Columbia, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie, all the while fixing it up for some pretty major cruising someday. If that's the sort of thing that you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. We'd love to have you. So this week I've been doing a lot of planning for the engine swap, which is going to come in the next couple of weeks, 3 weeks probably. A lot of that entails some structural work that I've been planning to do to the hull of the boat. Longtime viewers will remember that I've talked about that. And in fact, I'm going to use some clips from some earlier episodes to explain and sort of lead into what I'm going to talk about with you today. But so let's just get on with it, shall we?
So let's talk a little bit about boat structure. Or maybe first we need a little background.
Okay, so it's not really the kind of thing you can just jump into without much of an explanation, but you've heard me talk before about the way this boat is built, and it has that hard chine. I'm going to tell you all about it if you haven't. I think of it as a structural flaw, and I'd like to do something about it. Now, this is an old boat and it needs to be restored, so there are a few broken frames and some suspect frames, so whatever happens, it needs repair work. But I want to go beyond that because, as some of you know, I intend to do some pretty significant cruising with the boat, which means it's going to be trucked, it's going to be shipped, it's probably going to be beached and run up on a rock at least once or twice in the period of time I own it, and I'd like it to deal with all of that as well as possible. And I don't particularly believe the original design was up for that.
So to get started, let's look at the typical cross-section of a wooden sailboat. Now, your classic wine glass shape, you have your keel, your red is your planking, inside that in green is your frames, and to secure it all together, they're connected together with what's called floors, which are the beams that connect the left and the right. Super strong, super robust, but not what I'm dealing with. Okay, so let's ask Peter from the past to come forward in time here and give us a bit of background on what we're dealing with. Or maybe not that far back.
Okay, I don't want to go on at great length about all the intricate details of the way wooden boats are put together and all the problems that they have and all the problems this one have. I'll try to spread that over lots of episodes because there is lots to talk about. But I wanted to give a little bit of review about how this particular boat is put together and what I think are some of its shortfalls. Okay then, rot, iron sickness, and electrolysis delignification are problems pretty much all wooden boats share. But this boat and those similar to it share one more problem, which I think is actually its most serious problem. If you look right here at this stringer here, you can see that right here the frames take a pronounced bend behind this stringer. Well, this gets more and more pronounced as you move aft. As you look up forward, this stringer is basically a continuous curve. As you move aft, it becomes more and more pronounced there. Well, that's for a couple of reasons. The design part of it is because this boat has a hard chine. It starts about where I'm sitting, works its way all the way a few inches under the waterline, all the way to the transom where it's almost a 90 degree. The transom of this boat is almost flat on the bottom. In other words, it's a flat bottom boat. Very hard chine just below the waterline. Means it glides through the water beautifully. It's only drawing about 2 inches of water at the stern, and underway the water just sort of glides off the back with almost no wake. Brilliant. Thank you, Edwin Monk. Except it creates a corner. Well, steam bent oak frames aren't particularly good at going around corners. It's not even a very sharp corner here, and I can tell you this frame is broken. This frame is broken. Now that alone isn't tragic. Lots of boats shift and move around. As long as you stabilize it, it's not the end of the world. But it is a sign of a problem. And the problem is, as I've said, you can't expect steam bent oak frames to take that kind of bend and not break, especially over time. The boats weren't meant to last that long. The other thing that happens is, a round bottom boat has the strength of an egg. It's very, very strong. You put a corner in it and suddenly loads on the keel and weight loads and other kinds of loads on it are flexing that corner because it's not meant to be strong. And they didn't build it strong from here aft. In fact, it's really bad. So there needs to be a system to strengthen up this connection. And as I said, as you move aft, it gets worse and worse.
Now, don't get me wrong, I think it's a brilliant design and it's incredible in the water. It's just a bit structurally complicated. I'm very fortunate to have one of Edwin Monk's new design hulls, which include a hard chine that becomes more and more pronounced as it moves aft. This is a cross section near the stern. So as we add in the various components of the hull, here we can see the planks in red, we see we have a very sharp corner which isn't particularly good for steam bent oak frames. So what Ed Monk did, he made the frames take a much gentler curve, or at least a somewhat gentler curve, inside the actual hard chine of the boat, which creates a void, of course, between the frames and the hull, which he filled with another stringer, effectively an inner chine. Of course, he also put a stringer inside that as well, creating a very strong joint there. There's also ends up being a couple of wedge-shaped spaces that I'm coloring here in blue, where he put some little wood wedges in as well. Maybe we need to blow up here to get a clearer idea of what's going on. So there's the outside shape of the hull, including that hard chine, and here come the planks. Now for the more gently curved frame and the inner chine piece, as well as the regular stringer which is inside that. Of course, then we have those two little blue wedges that we have to fill in with some block, and the whole thing is held together with a big carriage bolt. Now, this is not a bad detail, but the oak frames still suffer and break. How can we make it better? But before we look at that, let's look at the forces in the hull. Here again is the cross section of the boat, showing those hard chines as well as the water level. Much of the weight of the boat is actually conveyed down through the hull, and when the boat's afloat, that's supported equally across the bottom of the hull by water pressure on the bottom of the boat. That's generally okay, but let's look at the situation where, gosh forbid, the boat sits on a rock, or just on the ground, or even just at a hollow where the stands aren't placed properly, and all that force comes up on the keel. Well, then that force gets transferred to the outer edges of the boat, to those previously mentioned vulnerable chines. And that problem is further exacerbated by the fact that that force has to be carried to the outer edge of the hull through very shallow floor timbers. So what I'm hoping to create here is a stronger structural line from the hull through to the keel. And I'll do that with two structural improvements. The first being more floor timbers. So I'll put new floor timbers, exactly the same as the old ones, but halfway between them, so that my on center for floor timbers becomes 4.5 inches instead of the 9 inches they're currently on, which will more than double the strength of the bottom of the boat. The second step will be to create stronger chine framing, and that too involves sister members. I'll be sistering in new frames, but not quite the way you might think. Let's have a look. Chine strengthening, like it's a thing. Okay, let's look at that chine one more time, starting with the planking here in red, and then the steam bent oak frame taking the slightly gentler radius. The inner chine and the stringer all held together with a carriage bolt. Now, what if we were to put a sister oak frame halfway between the existing ones, like I'm going to do with the floors, in other words, on staggering on every 4.5 inches, but not in between the chine log, inner chine log, and the stringer, but actually on the inside of that second stringer, making it a much stronger connection. You know, it's starting to get hard to tell what's going on here. Let's go to 3D. Okay, then this should be a lot clearer. First, let's remove all the stuff and start from scratch. What we're looking at here is just the planking, the basic hull, as well as I left the chine log in just for simplicity. So let's put back the parts that we've already talked about, the little wedges that allow the frames to make a smooth angle with the hull, the frames themselves, the floors, the inner stringer, and we're pretty much back to where the boat is now. Now, if we're going to add some more frames, some sisters, I'm going to put them halfway between the existing ones, starting with the little wedges again, and here we go. Yes, plastic frames, only in the section where the new frames aren't going to touch. I need something to put screws in from the planks, and plastic's perfect here because it's flexible. I can slide it up behind that stringer. So carrying on, we'll put in the new, much more gradually steam bent frames, which will come down on the outside of those stringers and fare into the plastic ones, some bolts to hold it all together through to the chine log, and new floors, making it a really stout setup. Hang on, we're not quite done yet. We've been spending this time looking at the situation at the very aft end of the boat where it's most severe. Let's work our way forward and look at a couple of different conditions. As we move forward, the chine becomes less and less pronounced, so I may not have to go through such heroic measures to be able to strengthen the hull adequately. The curve of the frames is less and the floors are deeper, so it's just not that bad. And then as we get up into the bow, the chine disappears altogether and we have a cross-section that resembles something closer to a more traditional wooden boat. The other huge advantage up here is that the floors are very deep, making it very, very strong. But wait, did I say the middle of the boat was going to be just fine? Well, maybe I forgot to mention that in the middle of the boat lives my very heavy, smelly, stinky friend. Yes, the engine lives here. And well, it sits pretty low in the boat. It sits on two big engine beds which sit on the floors. The only problem is the engine isn't that big. It's actually this big, and as a result it sits and cuts out the floors. Worse yet, the engine mounts aren't there. They're actually significantly lower, and as a result there's nothing much left of the engine beds. Something needs to be done here, but that's a discussion for another day. Anyone feel like a beer?
Well, hello there, and welcome to the Travels with Geordie Beer of the Week. It's windy as heck out, so we thought we'd do this inside, although it's promisingly nice. Let's start with the beer. Now, this is a little unusual. This is from Cannery Brewing, Okanagan Days, Apricot and Pinot Gris. Okay. I know what you're all thinking. That sounds like a disaster in a can. You know, but it's not. I've had a couple of these already, and not quite sure how they got into my life, but they're remarkably tasty. But I'm, speaking before I've actually made the taste here, so we'll see what I actually think of it, having never tasted this before. Okay, so Okanagan Days from Cannery Brewery. Let's see. Look at the haze on that. Having never tasted that before, I'm just going to say, wow! For an apricot beer, Pinot Gris, I don't really know about that part of it, but that's actually a very tasty beer. Ever so slight hint of apricot, but it could almost be unflavored, just the fact that it sort of reminds you of apricot. Oh gosh. That was good. Just in case you need to know what that rumble was, that was my water pump. Not a bodily function of any sort. Okay, we have lots to get through here. First off, last week's t-shirt winner is Stuart Howe. Stuart, I've reached out to you, so hopefully you've got my email, and you'll get back to me and we'll get you a t-shirt. I want to thank two new patrons that came on this last week. Thank you so much to Steve Reynolds and Dennis Dorsey. Thank you so much to both of you. I'm so very grateful. Apricot, believe it or not. Okay, and another unbelievable week from Amazon. I am so grateful, especially for the electrical and system stuff, because when I get to that after the engine, I'm going to be going hard and fast, and it's unbelievable how quickly you can spend money doing electrical work on a boat. So I got a bunch of electrical terminals from Greg Johnson. Thank you so much, Greg. I got the monster 4-inch blower, which if you've been watching the ventilation episode, this is the fellow that's going to look after that. That's quite a serious blower, and that came from Rick Miller. Thanks so much, Rick. Count them, two massive, big, beautiful braid mooring lines came from a friend of mine, Lloyd Williams. Thank you ever so much, Lloyd. I really appreciate that. And they're going to go right into service because my current lines are a bit of a mess. A circulation pump. Now, this one is really amazing because it came gift packaged in this bag. So neat. Well, what this is a little 12-volt circulation pump, and this is going to be used for the upcoming hydronic central heating system. Now, I've already actually got a temporary version of that running, but it was kind of a mock-up, so I haven't showed it to you. But when we get this going properly, this little circulation pump is going to keep me warm. So we'll more into that later. And that came from Jeff Stowe. Thank you very much, Jeff. And, oh, fantastic gulper pump. If you watched me put the shower pump in MV Zephyrus, you'll be familiar with this, and if you're a boater at all, you're familiar with the relatively famous whale gulper pump. It can pump anything. This will be used for the gray water system, notably the shower sump, because my shower sump pump is on its last legs. But I'm going to have a complete gray water system. This boat is going to be zero discharge. Not even the bilge is going to pump overboard, because there are certain harbors where that's going to become less and less popular. So I'm going to have a gray water tank on board where everything, shower, sinks, all the gray water, including bilge water, pump into it for eventual pump out. Or anyway, I want to be in a situation where I have zero discharge, because I think that's the future of boating. And that beautiful gulper pump was gifted to me by John Caldwell. Thank you so much, John. And a stack, the final stack of circuit breakers for the circuit panel, and some more electrical terminals. And these came direct from the supplier without any indication of who sent them. So if you sent me these breakers and terminals, please let me know so that I can thank you properly. So cheers to all of you. So very, very grateful. It's unbelievable, this Amazon wish list thing. It's just been fantastic, and it'll make it so much easier to get going on the next upcoming projects. Awesome. Okay. I do want to say a little bit of housekeeping. I am behind in my correspondence. I just seem to be overwhelmed lately. It's fantastic. All the emails and comments and messages, Facebook and Instagram and elsewhere that I get, I read them all. I appreciate them all. If I'm slow getting back to you, please forgive me. I will try to get back to everything that is a question or elicits a response, and I'm working my way through them back now. So you may get a reply from me for something you sent weeks ago, dare I say months ago. So again, have patience. I'm going to catch up with all of that, because it's important to me to keep the communications as part of this community, because that's really what is the most powerful thing for me. So thanks to you all for that. So what do you need? Let me just have a sip. Apricot Pinot Gris. It's so elegant. Okay, you need a word of the week. Whoa! If you'd like to win a Travels with Geordie t-shirt, simply use the word structure. Did you see it coming? Structure in a comment down below, and I'll pick at random over the next week. And if I pick you, you'll win a Travels with Geordie t-shirt. Okay, structure. That's all I got. All right, see you next week.